I am Dr. Kim Sage. I'm a licensed clinical psychologist, and I am so glad you're here joining me on this channel where we talk about really our mental health and our trauma and our childhoods and healing and attachment, really everything that sort of happened to you in childhood and how it often shapes who you are today. Really quickly, if you're new here, please consider subscribing and joining this little growing community. And I'm going to share today from 3 courses that I've created. You can check out down below on Thinkific. This is actually a page from my course on healing and dealing from the trauma of borderline and or narcissistic parents who were untreated. I want to make this very clear. I'm not talking about parents or those who have some awareness of their, struggles and are working on those things, though they can still be hurtful. My experience has been that the majority of people that I work with have these parents or have them, and the parents seem to have no real motivation or awareness to change. So I want to talk today about something really, really important, which is that when we are often in the midst of these dynamics with wounding parents, we don't necessarily always know that we're in them. And as I've said, I want to keep sharing. I keep coming back to things that I wish I knew so much earlier. And even though I, read a lot of self-help books and watched a lot of Oprah with the psychologist guests back in the day, and not all of them necessarily, always perfect, but I was always so fascinated with child development and psychology. But I didn't understand that I was living in an untreated toxic relationship. Untreated meaning that my parent was suffering with what I do believe is BPD and did not have a trauma history. I want to make that clear. And also I have lost a father at 23 to his own removing himself from this planet, and I did not even know that he was not my biological father because my borderline mother did not even tell me until I was 42. That's a whole other story. I talk about it a little bit in this course, and I would like to share more, but the point is, I was alone. I was an only child, did not have close family at all, because borderlines who don't get treated often, inadvertently or unconsciously or whatever, because of their disorder, they often sabotage relationships with other family, and we were physically and geographically far away. There really was no one. There was no one. And that has really been the source of one of my biggest struggles. And many of you have shared about being the only children of these type of parents. But the bottom line is that I had no idea what was going on. And then once I started realizing it and started going, this is not okay. I was a mom. And of course, when you start to really separate from them, it gets a lot worse. So the best times I ever had with her were the years between losing my father and me finding a partner, which was a lot of trauma in those times. It was just the two of us for many reasons. And so we had a pretty good relationship then because I was her person. Things would get fired, there'd be firing of emotions with her, but it wasn't bad. Where it really started to get bad was when I started to build my own life. And so I wanted to share a couple pages as an example from my course, because for so many of us, we are often, still in these relationships with our toxic parents. As I've said in so many videos, if you do all of the work and the therapy and the courses, but you don't start to shift the actual relationship with this parent, either physically, emotionally, from a boundary perspective or otherwise, and even if you are actually in no contact, but you have not yet really come to terms, you feel better, but it's still very unprocessed and undone, these exercises are really meant to help you get clarity, and not just for this relationship with this parent or parents, but because this is the template for all relationships. And so if you are boundaryless with your toxic parent, I can promise you there are some places that you are still boundaryless, even in the best relationships, because a lot of it is you internalizing that you are allowed to set boundaries. So for example, I have a page here which talks about the different places we can set boundaries: emotional, material, our things, how we share; intellectual boundaries, what we talk about. As I've said in the previous elections, that was a fertile ground for a lot of conflict. And so you want to be clear, why would I even bring this topic up if I'm going to see this person or this partner or parent, frankly, in a limited way, like an ex-partner perhaps. But what I wanted to really share was to help you get super clear on signs that your parent is wounding, because so many people are still, like I said, in these relationships. And so the goal of this exercise, and just really quickly, this course is full of exercises, meditations, affirmations, tons of videos, journal prompts, things like that. But I do have some specific exercises. And so my goal with this one is to really help you get clear on knowing that they are wounding. The hard part is, especially with untreated borderline, they can be also loving and helpful and wonderful. And so you have to look at, I said this to another patient recently, it's the word and. They can be loving and very hurtful. And the loving, even though it can be great and helpful, they watch my kids, they help me move my house, whatever it is, there's no place where loving makes abusive behavior okay. It just doesn't. And that's what I think is the heart of why it is so difficult to identify this disorder, and as a child, as you're someone or someone actually who even has it, because it's not bad all of the time for many people. There's a huge spectrum of what it looks like. So for example, signs my parent is wounding. Identify and describe your boundaries as of today. Now this section comes a little bit later in the course, so the idea is that you would have all of the knowledge and have begun to build some boundaries and awareness. What will you accept and what will you no longer accept in each area? So the first one is emotions towards me, feelings they express, how they treat you, what they try to project on you, or how they show up emotionally, their anxiety, their rage, whatever it is. Setting boundaries around what you will allow and no longer allow. As in, Mom, I will no longer allow you to scream and yell at me and hang up on me or rage text me or whatever. If you need some time to pull yourself together, you can do that, but I'm not going to continue to stay in this back and forth dynamic. The next one is what they do that hurts me. It's important for you to get clear on what is it that is hurtful, because that other piece where it's not always bad really muddies the water. And so is it what they say? Is it what they do? Is it how they respond to you on certain things? Is it their interjecting in your parenting, whatever? Name calling, how they talk to me. So it's not just what they do, it also might mean, borrowing money and not paying it back, or expecting you to take care of them. But then also let that feed into how they talk to you, their tone of voice, the words they use, what they do to hurt others in my life. Oftentimes, many parents who have unhealthy internal struggles don't have great respect and view your partner, even your children, as threats. And so they might do things to actually hurt them. They might do things to them to hurt you. So you want to get clear. What are the unacceptable choices that I will no longer allow? What decisions will I make? What things are they doing and saying and expressing? What things are just unacceptable that I won't allow anymore? What might happen if I don't change this relationship? This is really, really important, because so often we're stuck. It's why it took me so many years, because it wasn't always bad. I didn't think about and realize until it started happening how this parent might try to turn my own young, tween children against me, or talk bad about me to my own children, and what that impact was going to be for them, which, by the way, is very common. Because it's often that splitting, you're good or bad, right or wrong. So they're trying to sort of get people on their team, on their side, to justify what they're feeling and those yucky feelings they want to put onto you. What is the damage to my mental or physical health? Certainly, getting sucked up in the rage with them, or feeling just terrible about yourself. I've shared being actually in a moment in time where I would, 40-something years old in a closet, on the phone with my best friend, saying how much I hated her and feeling like this is not normal. This is terrible. I feel bad about myself for feeling this way. This is not right. Not everyone has this experience, but you can get stuck in a shame cycle with them, or you can't imagine living without them, but you can't live with them, or you're not really talking to them, and so you feel bad about that. And then it affects, going back to chronic mental and physical health issues in terms of trauma. You are in a trauma cycle. If you were raised by a parent like this who remains untreated, or toxic relationship, and it's not shifting, it is still creating traumatic and chronic stress for you. And that affected my parenting then, right? If I was upset with her and irritable or anxious, then maybe I wasn't going to have the same ability to manage the next scenario with one of my kids who was in a spicy mood or whatever. And then I had a lot of pressure to be the perfect parent and not to be upset, and a lot of knowledge. Some of the hardest, parents in the world, hardest on themselves, are therapists, because on the one hand, we know what's not okay. And that can be a setup for us too. But the bottom line is it impacted every part of my mental and physical health. And lastly, what are the boundary violations that if I don't hold the boundaries, that can hurt me? So if I set a boundary around, vacation or holiday time, and I break that, and then I end up upset and crying in the bathroom, for example, and my kids are waiting for me to go somewhere, or if my children witness, it's really messed up to have your kids watch a parent and a grandparent get into it. And that should not be happening for the most part. Like occasionally snippy things, but like I'm talking about, and if you were raised by a parent like this, you know what I'm saying. And so that's not healthy. Even though it's not maybe you and your spouse fighting, it's an important person in your life, or should be, or oftentimes they could be great grandparents when the kids are little, and yet when they start pushing back, things don't go well. Is it I lose money if I get guilty and give it away to this person? Is it being accused of stealing and that feels terrible because I let them back in? Like I could go on and on for the millions of examples I have with patients alone in these situations. And so when you set all this up and you get really clear with yourself, it helps you not get sucked into the guilt and the shame and to fall back into the same patterns. Because so many of us in these cycles have had toxic patterns of going back into that sort of cave of darkness and bad relationship again and again and again. And then oftentimes we'll wake up and go no contact or whatever, which, like I'm saying, it can be the only option. There are a range of options, from boundary setting to gray rocking type tea party relationships to no contact, but we're often just reactive to them. We're not really intentionally setting up these relationships mindfully. And that is really the goal of this part of the course, is to, and really any book you look at on emotionally toxic parents talks about how to kind of move forward, what your options might be. So feel free to check out also a list of books I have on my website too. So anyway, I hope you found it helpful. Like no matter what you do, you will let this video really let you think about being very mindfully clear about what the wounding is, what your part is, what you can control, what you can't, and knowing that though you had no control to set up the relationship, this sort of being trapped in childhood, you do have choices today that you can make. They're not always easy. They can be, actually excruciating sometimes, but you do have the power to make those choices. So thanks for watching. Please stay safe and well, and I'll see you soon. Take care. Bye-bye.